Senior Observer Tejo leaned back in his chair, his four eyes blinking rapidly as he processed the data flowing across his screens. The small scout ship hung in the darkness of space, hidden from view by its advanced cloaking technology. The vessel had been mapping this sector of space for the past 3 orbital cycles when they stumbled upon something unexpected. A civilization thriving in conditions that should have been impossible. Jai Yun, his young assistant, worked at the station next to him. Her crystalline eyes reflected the soft blue glow of the monitors as she ran the scans for the 4th time. Like all members of their species, both Tejo and Jai Yun had protective outer shells that helped them survive in the controlled environment they needed. But what they were seeing on the screens below made their shells quiver with disbelief. "I've never seen readings like these before," Jai Yun said, her voice barely above a whisper. She adjusted her sensory inputs and recalibrated the equipment again. The atmospheric composition alone should make life impossible. The oxygen levels would cause instant cell death in most known species. Tejo nodded, his upper eyes focused on the visual feeds while his lower pair studied the environmental readings. The blue-green planet designated as Sol 3 spun slowly beneath them, its surface a mix of vast blue oceans and green-brown landmasses. White clouds swirled across its atmosphere in complex patterns. "Look at these temperature variations," he said, pulling up a detailed scan of the planet's surface. Some regions swing from below freezing to scorching heat in a single planetary rotation. And these areas here, he pointed to large red zones on the map, regularly experience temperatures that would melt our protective shells. Jai Yun moved closer to examine the readings. "Sir, the oceans, they're made of dihydrogen monoxide. That's highly corrosive to most known life forms. How could anything survive in such conditions?" Yet as they watched, the evidence of not just survival but advanced civilization was undeniable. The night side of the planet sparkled with artificial lights, forming intricate patterns that outlined cities and transportation networks. Satellites orbited the planet, though primitive by Galactic Council standards. Their sensors detected radio waves, digital communications, and other clear signs of technological development. "Run a detailed scan of one of their larger urban centers," Tejo ordered, his curiosity overcoming his initial shock. The screens shifted to show a sprawling coastal city. Massive structures of metal and glass reached toward the sky, while countless smaller buildings spread out in all directions. Flying vehicles moved through designated airways, while ground transportation systems created complex networks below. But what truly amazed them was watching the planet's inhabitants, the humans, moving about their daily lives as if their deadly environment was perfectly normal. "They're not wearing any protective gear," Jai Yun noted with astonishment. "They're just walking around in that toxic atmosphere. And look, some of them are even submersing themselves in the dihydrogen monoxide for recreation." Tejo zoomed in on a recreational area where humans were indeed willingly entering a large pool of the corrosive liquid. Others were consuming food and beverages in the open air, their bodies somehow processing the oxygen without combusting. Children played in areas where the temperature would be lethal to most species, their bodies adapting to the conditions without any visible technology. "This defies everything we know about viable conditions for intelligent life," Tejo said, his voice heavy with the weight of their discovery. He began composing his report to the Galactic Council, knowing this would cause a sensation among the scientific community. Classification: Deathworld. He dictated while Jai Yun recorded. The planet designated Sol 3 presents environmental conditions that exceed all known parameters for sustainable life. Yet we have discovered an advanced civilization of beings who have not only adapted to these extreme conditions, but appear to thrive in them. The implications of this discovery require immediate attention from the Council. As they continued their observations, they noticed more bizarre aspects of human behavior. The beings seemed to actively seek out challenges in their already dangerous environment. They climbed frozen mountains, explored underwater caves, and built settlements in places where the air was so thin it should have been impossible to survive. Priority level: Jia-Yun asked, preparing to transmit the report. Tahoe considered for a moment. All four of his eyes focused on the image of Earth rotating below them. This discovery would change everything they thought they knew about the development of intelligent life. More importantly, any species that could evolve to survive in such conditions might represent either a significant threat or an invaluable ally to the Galactic Council. Priority. Urgent, he declared. And add a personal note. Recommend immediate formation of a full research team. We need to understand how these beings survive, and what their existence means for our understanding of life in the universe. As Jia-Yun transmitted the report, Tahoe continued watching the humans going about their lives, blissfully unaware that they had just been classified as one of the most remarkable and terrifying species ever discovered by the Galactic Council. Their very existence challenged everything the Council thought they knew about the limits of life itself. "Sir," Jia-Yun said softly, "do you think we should make contact?" Tahoe shook his head slowly. "Not yet. First, we need to understand them better. A species that evolved in such conditions, we need to be very careful about how we approach them. For now, we watch and we learn." The scout ship maintained its position, cloaked and silent, as its crew continued to document the impossible world below them. Soon, they knew, this peaceful observation would give way to one of the most important first contact situations in galactic history. But for now, they watched in wonder as the inhabitants of this Deathworld went about their lives, unaware that they were being studied by beings who could barely comprehend their existence. The research vessel Stellar Seeker glided silently into Earth's orbit, its advanced cloaking systems ensuring it remained invisible to the primitive radar systems below. Chief Researcher Hyunwoo stood at the command center, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. 12 of the Galactic Council's finest scientists worked at their stations around him, each chosen for their expertise in different fields. Initial atmospheric analysis complete, Scientist Yuna announced from her station. Her scaled fingers moved swiftly across the holographic controls as data streamed in. The humans have somehow adapted to breathe a nitrogen-oxygen mix that would be toxic to most known species. Their lungs can even filter out numerous pollutants without any technological assistance. Hyunwoo walked over to her station, his protective suit making soft whirring sounds as he moved. The entire ship maintained an atmosphere similar to their home world, but protocol required protective gear in case of emergencies. The data on her screen showed readings that seemed impossible. "Show me their temperature adaptability range," he ordered, his scientific curiosity piqued. The main screen filled with thermal imaging from various locations around the planet. In the polar regions, humans worked in temperatures far below freezing, protected only by thin layers of artificial material they called clothing. Meanwhile, in desert regions, others survived heat that would cook most species alive. "Look at this," said researcher Minkyu from his biology station. "They're consuming substances that should kill them instantly." He pulled up footage of humans in what appeared to be a gathering place called a cafe. They were willingly drinking dark liquids containing high concentrations of caffeine, a known neurotoxin. "And this," added scientist Jaya, her eyes wide behind her protective visor. "They actively seek out foods containing capsaicin, a chemical compound that causes intense pain. They appear to enjoy it." Hyunwoo watched in fascination as humans went about their daily lives, seemingly unaware of how extraordinary their capabilities were. A display showed a human child falling and injuring itself, only to have the wound heal completely within days. Another screen displayed medical data showing humans recovering from broken bones, their bodies naturally knitting the fractures back together. "Their regenerative abilities are remarkable," noted Medical Officer Sungho. "They can recover from injuries that would be fatal to most species. Even their teeth can repair minor damage, and their skin constantly regenerates itself." The research team continued gathering data, each discovery more astounding than the last. They observed humans living in pressurized underwater habitats, scaling mountains where the air was too thin to breathe, and working in environments filled with radiation that should have killed them instantly. Their adaptability extends beyond physical resilience, reported psychology specialist Yumna. She gestured to a screen showing humans in various situations. They can adjust their sleep cycles, modify their diets, and acclimatize to dramatic changes in their environment. Their brains show exceptional plasticity. Hyunwoo moved from station to station, reviewing the findings of each researcher. The humans' immune systems could fight off countless pathogens. Their bodies could process a wide variety of organic materials for nutrition, and their endurance exceeded anything they had encountered before. They appear to be able to maintain physical activity for extended periods, noted physical sciences expert Juno. Some of them run massive distances for recreation, distances that would exhaust or kill most species. The most puzzling aspect was how humans seemed completely unaware of their extraordinary capabilities. To them, surviving in conditions that would be lethal to most of the galaxy's known species was simply normal. Document everything, Hanwoo ordered, returning to his central position. Every adaptation, every capability, no matter how minor it might seem. We need to understand how they developed these traits. As the day progressed, the research team discovered more remarkable features of human biology. Their bodies could regulate internal temperature despite extreme external changes. They could survive significant blood loss, and their wounds healed with minimal scarring. Even their reproductive process seemed designed for survival, with multiple redundant systems ensuring successful continuation of their species. "Sir," called out Yuna, her voice filled with excitement. "You need to see this. We've detected humans living in artificial habitats in some of the most extreme environments on their planet. Deep underwater, in frozen wastelands, and even in orbital stations with minimal protection from radiation." Hyunwoo stared at the screens, his scientific mind struggling to process the implications of their findings. How had evolution produced a species so incredibly resilient? What kind of planetary conditions would drive the development of such adaptability? "Begin compiling the preliminary report," he ordered, his voice thoughtful. "But keep gathering data. I have a feeling we've only scratched the surface of what these humans are capable of." As he watched the screens showing humans going about their daily lives, working, playing, exploring, and surviving in their deadly environment, Hanwoo couldn't help but wonder what other surprises this species might reveal. Their very existence challenged everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about the limits of biological adaptation. "How is this possible?" he muttered, making another note in his report. The question wasn't just rhetorical. Understanding how humans had developed such extraordinary capabilities could revolutionize their understanding of evolution and adaptation throughout the galaxy. The research vessel continued its orbit around Earth, its crew working tirelessly to document and analyze every aspect of human life and biology. With each passing hour, it became clearer that they had discovered something unprecedented, a species that didn't just survive in conditions that should be lethal, but one that thrived in them. Director Minho stared at the display screens in the command center, his protective outer membrane rippling with shock. Around him, the research team had gathered to review the latest cultural analysis of human behavior, and what they saw left them all in disbelief. "Play that segment again," Minho ordered, his voice still shaking. Research assistant Daeun nodded and brought up the footage on the main screen. The images showed humans leaping from perfectly functional aircraft, plummeting through the toxic atmosphere with only thin fabric devices to slow their descent. Others scaled sheer ice cliffs with minimal safety equipment, while some dove into deep ocean trenches where the pressure should have crushed their bodies. "Our initial assessment was incomplete," Daeun explained, her voice steady despite her obvious concern. "We thought these were emergency survival activities, but they're not. The humans do this for entertainment. They call it extreme sports." The command center fell silent as they watched more footage. Humans strapped themselves to boards and slid down snow-covered mountains at lethal speeds. They jumped across urban rooftops with no safety equipment. Some even fought each other in enclosed spaces for the amusement of watching crowds. "Look at this," said senior analyst Jae-yun, pulling up another video feed. "They have something called wing suits where they fly through narrow mountain passes at speeds that leave no room for error. One mistake means certain death." Minho's protective membrane darkened, the equivalent of a human turning pale. "And they do this voluntarily. No one forces them." "Not only voluntarily," Dae-yun confirmed, "but they train for years to do these activities. They have competitions. They give awards to those who take the biggest risks and survive." The screen showed more examples of what the research team had dubbed recreational suicide attempts. Humans rode enormous waves of dihydrogen monoxide, dove into underwater caves, and climbed mountains so high that the air was too thin to breathe properly. Their entertainment isn't limited to individual risk-taking, noted security specialist Woojin, bringing up his own findings. "Look at their sports. They deliberately crash into each other with enough force to cause internal injuries. They punch each other in the head repeatedly. Some of their games involve throwing themselves at high speed into other players." Minho moved closer to the screens, his scientific curiosity warring with his instinctive horror. "Show me the military analysis." The display shifted to show human warfare capabilities. The research team watched in stunned silence as centuries of human military development played out before them. From simple spears to thermonuclear weapons, humans had turned nearly every scientific breakthrough into a means of destruction. They weaponized the atom almost immediately after discovering how to split it, Woojin explained. They developed powered flight, and within decades were using it to drop explosives. Even their medical discoveries often have military applications. Their entire history is filled with warfare, added historical analyst Seo-yun. They've had periods of relative peace, but they're constantly preparing for the next conflict. Every human nation maintains armed forces, even in peacetime. The implications were staggering. A species that could not only survive in lethal conditions, but actively sought out danger for entertainment, and had developed sophisticated ways of warfare, represented a potential threat unlike anything the Galactic Council had encountered before. "There's more," Dae-yun said, bringing up new data. "They simulate dangerous situations for entertainment. They create artificial experiences of warfare, disaster, and death in something they call video games. Their young spend hours engaging in virtual combat scenarios." Minho watched as the screen showed humans playing these simulations, their faces showing excitement and joy rather than fear or concern. They've normalized danger to such an extent that they recreate it for fun. Even their nonviolent entertainment often involves risk, noted cultural specialist Haijin. They race vehicles at speeds that tear their bodies apart in crashes. They build massive structures just to experience the thrill of falling from them. They deliberately seek out frightening experiences in something called horror entertainment. The command center fell silent again as they processed these revelations. The humans weren't just surviving in their deadly environment. They were actively challenging it, pushing its boundaries, and turning its dangers into sources of excitement. "Update the threat assessment," Minho finally ordered. "Any species that treats lethal danger as entertainment cannot be approached with standard diplomatic protocols. We need to completely revise our first contact strategies." "Should we recommend avoiding contact altogether?" Woojin asked, his membrane pulsing with concern. Minho considered this for a moment, watching the screens where humans continued their death-defying activities. "No," he decided. "A species this resilient and adaptable could be either our greatest ally or our worst enemy. We need to understand them better before they discover us and make that decision for us." The research team returned to their stations, each member trying to comprehend a species that seemed to defy not just the laws of nature, but the basic instinct for self-preservation. As Minho began composing his report to the Galactic Council, he couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these remarkable and terrifying humans might reveal. The screens continued to display images of humans jumping, diving, fighting, and racing, all with expressions of joy that made no sense to the watching aliens. This was more than just a cultural shock. It was a fundamental challenge to everything they thought they knew about intelligent life. Junior xenobiologist Juwu nearly crashed into the laboratory's sliding doors as they opened too slowly for her rushing entrance. Her protective membrane was pulsing with excitement as she clutched her data pad, her footsteps echoing through the sterile research space of the vessel. "Senior researcher Sunwoo," she called out, her voice trembling with the thrill of discovery. "I've been analyzing the planetary data from the past 2 billion years, and everything makes sense now." Sunwoo looked up from his workstation, where he had been studying human tissue samples. Around the laboratory, other researchers turned their attention to the commotion. Juwoo's excitement was contagious, making their protective membranes ripple with curiosity. "Show me," Sunwoo said, moving to the main display area. Juwoo connected her data pad, and immediately the room filled with holographic charts and graphs showing Earth's geological and biological history. "Look at this timeline," she said, expanding one particular chart. "Earth has experienced 5 major extinction events before humans evolved. Each time, the planet's conditions changed so dramatically that most species died out, but some survived, and those that did became more adaptable." The display showed waves of species appearing and disappearing over millions of years. With each extinction event, the surviving species showed more complex adaptation mechanisms. Sunwoo's eyes widened as he began to understand the implications. "And this," Juwoo continued, pulling up another display, "is Earth's atmospheric composition over time. The oxygen content has fluctuated wildly. The temperature has swung between extremes. The planet's magnetic field has reversed multiple times. The continents themselves have split and recombined repeatedly. Any one of these changes would have wiped out life on most known planets," noted assistant researcher Minjae, who had joined them at the display. Juwoo nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. But Earth's life didn't just survive. It adapted and became stronger. Each crisis forced living things to develop new survival mechanisms. The humans aren't extraordinary by Earth standards. They're just the latest product of their planet's endless series of challenges." She brought up images of Earth's other life forms. Animals that could survive being frozen solid, plants that thrived in volcanic vents, microorganisms that could withstand radiation levels that would kill most species in the galaxy. "Their entire planet is what we would call a Deathworld," Sunwoo said slowly, beginning to understand. "Every living thing on Earth has evolved to survive conditions that would be lethal anywhere else. And humans," Juwoo added, pulling up human evolutionary data, "emerged during one of the most challenging periods. They evolved during rapid climate shifts, competing with large predators, surviving massive environmental changes. What we see as incredible resilience is simply their baseline." The research team gathered around the displays, watching as Juwoo showed them how Earth's species had developed increasingly sophisticated survival mechanisms over millions of years. The humans' apparent super abilities were actually adaptations that had been refined through countless generations of survival challenges. "This explains their behavior patterns too," said psychology specialist Yuna, who had been quietly observing. "Their drive to seek out dangerous situations, their ability to thrive under stress, these aren't abnormal traits for them. Their entire evolutionary history has rewarded adaptability and risk-taking." Sunwoo studied the data carefully, his scientific mind racing with the implications. "So when humans climb mountains or dive into oceans, they're just doing what their ancestors did to survive." Juwoo completed his thought. "Their bodies and minds evolved to overcome challenges. What we see as reckless behavior is actually their species expressing its core survival traits." The laboratory fell silent as the team processed this revelation. It wasn't just about understanding human biology anymore. They were seeing a completely new model of evolution, one driven by constant crisis and change rather than stability. "We need to revise all our previous assessments," Sunwoo finally said. "We've been looking at humans as if they were an abnormal species living in impossible conditions. but they're perfectly normal. For Earth, it's our definition of normal that needs to change. Chimu brought up one final display, a comparison between Earth's conditions and those of other known inhabited worlds. The difference was striking. While most life-bearing planets maintained relatively stable conditions, Earth was in a constant state of change. Their entire planet is a survival laboratory, she explained. Every species on Earth has evolved to expect and adapt to change. Humans aren't just surviving in deadly conditions, they're the product of those conditions. This is their normal. The implication stunned the research team into silence. They had discovered not just an unusually resilient species, but an entire planet that defied their understanding of how life evolved. Earth wasn't a death world. It was a crucible that forged life into forms more resilient than anything they had imagined possible. As the team began updating their reports and revising their theories, Juwu continued studying her data, knowing that this was just the beginning of understanding Earth's unique evolutionary story. The humans weren't an anomaly to be feared. They were the natural product of a world that had turned crisis into opportunity for billions of years. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward in sweeping curves of iridescent metal, designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of worlds. Today, every seat was filled as council members waited for the historic first meeting with Earth's delegation. Ambassador Hejun stood at his podium, his protective membrane barely containing his nervous energy. The chamber had been carefully prepared, with different atmospheric bubbles for various species. Most council members required specific environmental controls just to survive the meeting. When the massive doors slid open, the chamber fell into complete silence. The human delegation simply walked in, without environmental suits or protective gear of any kind. They moved with casual confidence through an atmosphere that would kill most species in minutes. Council leader Yunji, her crystalline form shimmering under the chamber's lights, activated her universal translator. "Welcome, Earth representatives," she announced, maintaining remarkable composure despite the tension in the room. "We are honored by your presence." The lead human diplomat, a woman who had introduced herself as Ambassador Chen, smiled warmly. Several council members visibly recoiled at the display of teeth, a feature most species associated with predators. "We are grateful for the invitation," she responded, seemingly unaware of the effect she was having on the assembly. Around the chamber, various species watched from within their protective environments. The methane breathers huddled in their dense green atmosphere. The silicon-based clustered in their high-pressure chambers. The liquid forms rippled nervously in their containment pools. "Please, tell us about your world," Yunji invited, following the traditional diplomatic protocol. What followed sent shockwaves through the assembly. "Earth is quite pleasant this time of year," Chen began casually. "Average temperatures range from about 20 to 30 degrees Celsius in most inhabited regions, though we have settlements in areas from -60 to +50 degrees. A council member from the ice worlds fainted, their crystalline form clouding over in shock. Medical teams rushed to their aid as Chen continued, unaware of the distress she was causing. "Our oceans cover most of the planet. Beautiful water bodies perfect for swimming and recreation," she added. Several dry world representatives visibly shuddered at the mention of such vast amounts of corrosive dihydrogen monoxide. Ambassador Hejun watched as more council members required medical attention. The humans spoke of their world's conditions as if describing a paradise, not the death trap that most species considered it. They mentioned breathing oxygen, as if it were the most natural thing in the universe, not a violently reactive gas that would destroy most life forms. "And of course, we're eager to share our cultural experiences," another human delegate added enthusiastically. "We have many sporting events and recreational activities that promote international friendship." The humans proceeded to show videos of their recreational activities. Beans jumping from high altitudes, diving into crushing ocean depths, climbing frozen mountains, and fighting each other in ritualized combat. Several more council members needed immediate medical attention. "Is something wrong?" Chen asked, Noticing the commotion for the first time, her genuine concern only added to the council's unease. Here was a being from a Deathworld, asking about others' well-being while casually discussing conditions that would kill most species instantly. Yunji managed to maintain her diplomatic poise. "Your world seems quite challenging by our standards," she said carefully. The humans looked confused. "Challenging?" Chen asked. "Earth is quite moderate compared to some of the planets we've been considering for colonization." This statement caused another wave of shock through the chamber. They were looking for even more extreme environments. Several security officers moved closer to their council members, unsure if these humans were making threats or simply stating facts. As the meeting continued, the humans kept revealing more about their capabilities and plans, each statement causing further distress among the council members. They talked about their space program, their plans for terraforming other worlds, their hopes for cultural exchange, all while standing in an atmosphere that should have been lethal, discussing conditions that would kill most species as if they were minor inconveniences. Ambassador Hejun watched it all with a mixture of fear and fascination. The humans weren't trying to be threatening. They genuinely didn't seem to understand how extraordinary their capabilities were. To them, surviving in conditions that would kill most species was simply normal. By the end of the meeting, over a third of the council members had required medical attention, and the rest were in various states of shock. Yet the humans remained perfectly calm, even suggesting a shared meal to celebrate the historic occasion, apparently unaware that their ability to consume food in an open environment was itself terrifying to most species. As the human delegation left the chamber, discussing plans for future meetings and cultural exchanges, the remaining council members huddled in their protective environments, trying to process what they had witnessed. They had prepared for first contact with a species from a Deathworld, but nothing had prepared them for beings who viewed such a world as paradise. The galaxy would never be the same after this meeting. The humans had arrived, and they weren't just surviving. They were thriving, exploring, and looking for new challenges. The question now wasn't whether to accept them into the galactic community, but how to cope with a species that made the impossible seem routine. Science Director Donghe stood before the Galactic Council, his protective membrane gleaming under the chamber's lights. The massive display behind him showed images of humans performing tasks that most species had long considered impossible. Every seat in the chamber was filled. This presentation had drawn representatives from even the most distant worlds. "Distinguished council members," Donghe began, his voice steadied despite his excitement. "Our initial assessment of humans as a dangerous species from a Deathworld was fundamentally flawed. What we saw as limitations are actually remarkable advantages." He gestured to the display, which showed humans working in a variety of extreme environments. In one scene, they repaired structures deep underwater. In another, they worked in radiation zones that would kill most species instantly. A third showed them building settlements in frozen wastes. "Look at this footage from their space program," he continued, bringing up new images. "While we rely on complex environmental suits and protective chambers, humans can work in space with minimal protection. Their bodies can handle radiation levels that would be lethal to most species." The council chamber buzzed with concerned murmurs. A representative from the methane worlds raised a tentacle. "But surely this makes them more dangerous, not less." Donghe shook his head, his membrane rippling with enthusiasm. "That's exactly what we misunderstood. Their adaptability isn't focused on conquest. It's directed toward solving problems. Watch this." The display showed humans responding to various natural disasters. They dove into flood waters to rescue others, ran into burning buildings, and dug through rubble to save lives. Their actions seemed to defy basic survival instincts. Their physical resilience is matched by extraordinary problem-solving abilities, Donghe explained. When faced with a challenge, humans don't just adapt, they innovate. They create new solutions. They turn obstacles into opportunities. He brought up data from various human scientific achievements. In just a few centuries, they had progressed from simple machines to space travel. Their technological advancement rate was unprecedented. But here's what's truly remarkable, Dong said, highlighting specific examples. Humans don't just survive in hostile environments. They find ways to make those environments work for them. They've built cities in deserts, established research stations in polar regions, and created underground settlements. The chamber erupted in discussion as council members debated the implications. Some saw potential threats, others opportunities. Dong He waited patiently for the noise to settle. "Consider this," he continued, showing new footage. "Humans have already offered to help us with tasks we thought impossible. They can repair our deep space installations without the complex equipment we require. They can explore worlds we can't safely visit. They can handle dangerous materials that would kill most of our workers instantly." The display showed humans conducting rescue operations in environments toxic to most species. They worked tirelessly, their bodies adapting to conditions that should have been lethal. "Their medical knowledge alone is revolutionary," Dong added. "They've developed treatments that work across multiple species because they understand adaptation at a fundamental level. Their own bodies' healing abilities have taught them principles we never considered." A representative from the Silicon world spoke up. "But how can we trust beings who evolved in such violent conditions?" Dong He smiled, a gesture he'd learned from humans. Because their harsh environment taught them the value of cooperation. Humans learned early that working together increased their chances of survival. They formed strong bonds, build communities, and help others even at risk to themselves. He showed footage of human emergency response teams. They've developed entire organizations dedicated to helping others in crisis. Their adaptability isn't just physical. It's social and emotional as well. The display shifted to show humans teaching other species how to handle dangerous environments. Their patience and enthusiasm were evident as they shared their knowledge. "They don't just survive," Dong He concluded, his voice filled with wonder. "They innovate and thrive in conditions we fear to approach. And most importantly, they want to help others do the same." The chamber fell silent as council members processed this new perspective. What they had feared as a potential threat was revealing itself as an unprecedented opportunity. "I recommend," Dong He said into the silence, "that we establish immediate cooperative programs with humans in areas where their unique abilities can benefit all species. Their adaptability isn't a weapon. It's a gift they're willing to share." The council chamber erupted in discussion again, but this time the tone was different. Fear was giving way to curiosity, suspicion to interest. The humans weren't just survivors from a death world. They were pioneers who could help the entire galaxy adapt and grow. As the council members debated the implications of his presentation, Dong He watched the displays showing humans at work, at play, and helping others. He understood now that their greatest strength wasn't their physical resilience or their problem-solving abilities. It was their drive to use those abilities to benefit not just themselves, but all life they encountered. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would lead the way, not through force or fear, but through their remarkable ability to adapt, innovate, and help others do the same. High Counselor Seojin's membrane glowed with a mix of emotions as he pressed his appendage to the biometric scanner. The document before him would change galactic history forever. Around the Grand Chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds watched in respectful silence as Earth's official designation changed from Deathworld to Crucible of Innovation. On the massive display screens surrounding the chamber, live feeds showed humans already at work throughout the galaxy. They moved easily through environments that other species had long considered impossible to survive. On a frozen moon, human engineers helped install new power systems, while local species watched from protected habitats. In the methane seas of distant worlds, human divers worked alongside native species to build new underwater cities. Ambassador Minji and her colleague Juno observed from their observation pod as a human instructor demonstrated survival techniques to a group of silicon-based beings. The humans wore only light protective gear, while their students required complex environmental suits. "Look at them," Minji said softly. 6 months ago, most species wouldn't even enter the same room as a human. Now they're lining up to learn from us. Shunho nodded, watching as the human teacher patiently explained how to adapt to changing temperatures. Our very existence terrified them. Now they see that same resilience as their greatest hope. The screen showed more scenes from across the galaxy. Humans were helping establish colonies on worlds previously thought uninhabitable. Their unique understanding of adaptation had revolutionized everything from medicine to architecture. What had once been seen as primitive survival traits were now recognized as advanced evolutionary advantages. The Methane World's delegate told me something interesting yesterday, Juno shared. Their species spent thousands of years trying to protect themselves from their environment. We're teaching them how to work with it instead. On another screen, human doctors worked with alien medical teams, sharing their knowledge of tissue regeneration and adaptive healing. Their body's natural ability to repair damage had opened new possibilities in medical science across species. The chamber's attention turned to a new display showing the first graduating class of the Interspecies Adaptation Academy. Humans had established the school to teach other species how to survive and thrive in challenging environments. The graduates represented dozens of different species, each now capable of handling conditions they once thought lethal. We've received requests from over 300 worlds, Minji noted, checking her datapad. They all want human advisors to help them expand their environmental capabilities. Even the high-gravity worlds want our input, and they used to think we were too fragile to survive anywhere. The screen shifted to show human architects working with various species to design new types of habitats. Instead of trying to completely control their environments, they were creating adaptive spaces that could change with conditions. It was a revolutionary approach that had already solved housing crises on several worlds. The Council's latest report is remarkable, Juno said. Colonies are succeeding on worlds we wrote off centuries ago. Trade routes are opening through regions we thought impossible to traverse. And it's all because we showed them how to adapt rather than control. High Counselor Seojin's voice echoed through the chamber as he finished the reclassification ceremony. Let the record show that Earth is now officially recognized, not as a threat to galactic stability, but as a source of innovation and progress. Its people have shown us that what we fear can become what makes us stronger. Around the galaxy, the effects of this new era were already visible. Species that had been confined to narrow environmental ranges for millennia were learning to expand their horizons. Ancient rivals were working together, united by the common goal of adaptation and survival. The funniest part, Minji remarked with a smile, is that we're still learning too. Teaching other species has forced us to understand our own abilities better. We're discovering new aspects of human adaptation every day. The screen showed one final image, a new galactic map. Zones previously marked as uninhabitable were now highlighted as development regions. The galaxy was opening up in ways no one had imagined possible just a year ago. The harsh conditions that had forged humanity into resilient survivors had created exactly what the galaxy needed. Teachers who could show others how to overcome their own limitations. Earth's designation had changed, but its role was even more significant. It wasn't just a world that created survivors. It was a world that had created teachers for an entire galaxy. As the ceremony concluded, delegates from hundreds of worlds lined up to submit requests for human assistance. The species that had once been feared as Deathworld monsters had become the galaxy's most valued instructors. The age of isolation was ending, replaced by an era of adaptation and growth. The galaxy had indeed learned its most important lesson. The greatest challenges often create the greatest opportunities. Earth's harshness hadn't created monsters. It had created exactly what the galaxy needed most: innovators, survivors, and teachers who could show others how to become the same.